Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is so different to what we usually do. There's so many of you. So thanks for coming and welcome to Startup Grind Lockdown Edition. We hope you've all had plenty of virtual pizza and drinks. Sorry, we couldn't provide them this time. But hopefully you've got something at home to keep you energized for the session. I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, AWS, Talent Army, and Cultivate for your continued support in making these Startup Grind events possible. So Shane from AWS has kindly given us an Amazon Alexa to give away for the best question at the end of this event. So don't forget to put your Q&A questions into the Q&A section down the bottom, and then we'll go through those at the end.
We're really excited about that.
Who do they have to bribe to? Who do they have to bribe to make sure that they get the Alexa?
What was that? Sorry.
Who do they have to bribe?
Oh, probably me.
Okay, so before we introduce Mahesh, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Startup Grind. Obviously, we have some new people that wouldn't normally be joining us today, which is fantastic. My name is Rosie. I'm the founder of Our Closet here in New Zealand, an online marketplace for the rental and resale of personal goods. And then we've got Sinead, who has experience building teams for a number of successful high-growth startups around the world. And she's now working day-to-day at Talent Army Auckland. So for those of you who haven't been to a Startup Grind event before, we were founded by Google. We are one of the world's largest startup communities, educating, inspiring, and connecting 3.5 million entrepreneurs in over 600 chapters across 125 countries. So we typically host monthly events featuring successful local founders, innovators, educators, and investors who share their personal stories and lessons that they've learned on the road to building great companies. So the three key values that underpin this are that we believe in making friends, not contacts. We believe in giving, not taking. We believe in helping others before helping yourself. So normally we would obviously be connecting in person, but today make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter and you're in our Facebook group to stay connected. We are recording this today as well, so we'll send out a link for you to watch it again afterwards or to pass on to friends and family who may also be interested. And when it comes to your questions for Mahesh, can you please put them in the Q&A and not the chat? That way they won't get lost, so we can get to those at the end, and you can be into the Amazon Alexa. Okay, Sinead, I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Rosie. So I'll just give a bit of an intro into Mahesh's background and kind of a high-level overview around what we're going to be discussing this afternoon. So Mahesh, I'm sure you'll introduce yourself as well, but I'll just give a bit of a high level. So Mahesh is a startup exec, investor, and advisor with experience in a number of scaling startups in both Australia and New Zealand. So his latest mission back home is with NZ ScaleUP, where he and his team are on a mission to transform the New Zealand startup ecosystem and help businesses here grow and learn, and doing that through training programs run by some serious startup operators. So tonight, or this afternoon, sorry, he is going to be providing us with a bit of a condensed overview, because we've only got 45 minutes, on some of the key ingredients that he thinks go into building a high growth scale up business. So he'll be sharing some of the key decisions and outcomes that need to be achieved, as well as the changes that need to occur for a business to be set up for that hyper growth. So let's get into it. Welcome, Mahesh. Thank you so much for joining us virtually today.
Thanks, Sinead. Thanks, Rosie. Shane, thanks for the Alexa. Did you say two Alexas? Oh, I think so. Oh, sorry, not Alexa. Sorry. The what is it called again, Sinead?
Yeah, Amazon Alexa. You know, the one you can talk to them Amazon in your Alexa.
House. Yeah, to an Amazon Alexa for the best question. Thanks so much for having me. I'll introduce myself as you suggested. Had my own tech startup in Australia about 8 years ago. Didn't build anything valuable, had funding on the table, but declined it because I wasn't convinced that we would make use of the money well. However, was invited to join Canva as employee number 25, helped it scale to about 200, 300 plus people, saw what was required to be high performant in the startup sector. I think when I joined, Canva was worth around 20 mil. Last in media, it was worth around 30 bill. That's what was suggested in the AFR about a month ago. I was then a senior exec at Airtasker, seeing how to scale in a different business model, and then an interim COO at Simply Wall Street, come back home, like you said, to help the New Zealand startup ecosystem. A big reason why the Australian startup ecosystem has really grown is, I think, the injection of people who've been there, done that. So I've got a few stories, so I'm excited about sharing those stories.
Cool, amazing. I'm excited to hear them. All right, so do you want to get into kind of, I don't know where you want to start, but maybe your first piece of advice? Or
yeah, I think it's interesting, right? So I've come back home and I've started working with quite a few of early stage startups, and the reason, and I gave you a little bit of an introduction to my experience, right? So I was a founder, a senior operator, and then now in the venture space. So I really empathize with founders and people who are off chasing a dream. And I assume many of the people attending right now are in that mindset and in that stage. They really want to change the world, make a big difference, etc. And it's quite an irrational exercise starting a startup. You know, you can get a 9-to-5 job. You can, you know, you don't have to worry about employees, making sure we're putting food on the table, etc. So you usually start a startup with this big vision and this notion of an idea that's going to change the world. And in my opinion and my experience, that doesn't work. So it is valuable to have a big vision, but to be honest, first off, straight away, the first thing you need to do is build a business. So you need to identify a very clear, acute problem, a problem statement, and then solve that problem statement. And the analogy I always like to say is you got to sell 1 cup of coffee, then you got to sell 2 cups of coffee, then you got to sell 5 cups of coffee. So I actually shirk a little bit when I hear the word idea. Ideas don't build businesses. Solving a problem builds a business. And if you can do that problem online to an acute niche customer, you have the beginnings of a high growth startup. Does that make sense, right?
yeah, that definitely makes sense. So rather than just having an idea, have a problem.
Yeah, and it's actually really hard to identify a problem, because your own a founder's desire to achieve the vision tomorrow or even today, like you're like, I just need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this, and it's done. We've got it. It's going to happen. It's going to change the world. Why won't anyone help me? Why won't anyone, give me capital? Why won't anyone give me attention? And it doesn't work that way, in my opinion. The single most important stakeholder when you're starting off, and for the longest time, is, Sinead, any guesses who the single most important stakeholder would be, could be?
Yourself?
No. And I think I want to call it out. It's not the investor. It's not the team. It's your customer. There you go. Myrta's got it. It's the customer. So you just have to identify a small acute niche of a customer group. So one of the tips that I heard recently was quite powerful, was even for a digital startup, your early team, you should know all your customers by name, right? So John, Jack needs this, whatever, SaaS solution, etc. Your first 10, 20, 100. I'm solving this problem for this person in this way. And it's really niche. And I'll show you a document a bit later, which gives an example of that first customer. The thing is, if you nail that, Then if you pour fuel onto it, the appropriate growth marketing tactics, etc., it really takes off. But if you don't have that product market fit and you start pouring fuel onto it, it doesn't take off so much. And then you build a sales team, and then you do this, and you try to keep flogging the solution, and it doesn't quite work. And just, yeah, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does that really come into how you're building a product that people love, is just really putting the customer first?
Yeah, but it's really about, yes, you're right. So putting the customer first, but it's really understanding the problem the customer has, right? It's not just about, hey, I need to get person A, I need to solve the transport problem. Is it 25 to 30-year-olds, 9 a.m. To 9:15 a.m. in Ponsonby, middle income, they can't handle the traffic, they can't get to a buses, and they feel very frustrated. It's that level of detail. And then, hey, currently they're using these alternatives. They're using Uber or whatever. This solution does it better for this niche, for these reasons. And it becomes very clear when you've achieved that, because those customers love it, and they nearly communicate to you saying that, man, I can't see how I could live without this. You really want to get that. And if I could just carry on, I remember being on the founder side and getting this advice, not so explicitly, but hey, I think you should do some more customer interviews. I think you should do this. And I remember thinking so clearly, man, you don't know my problems. I know my customer. I know I've got this team problem. I've got this sales problem. I've got this. But looking back now, as Jobs says, connecting the dots backwards, I didn't solve a customer problem. And you tried all of these other things. And that's the core of it. You have to start by solving an acute customer problem. And it's really hard. It's really hard to focus and do that.
I like how in the past, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I like how in the past you've kind of described that in a way of having a really childlike, innocent approach, and how you commented the fact that even just a toothpick, like it solves such a big problem. But if you look at that in, it's the simplest terms, it saves people's lives.
Yeah. Sorry, Rosie, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to take it back a step. Is being an entrepreneur or being in this space something that you've always wanted to do? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your background? Did you come from an entrepreneurial family? What did you study at university, and how did your journey start, just in that very early stage?
Sure. So I moved to New Zealand on my own when I was 14. I moved to Napier. New Zealand's really important to me, and arguably my highest form of identity right now. I moved to Napier because I was in Singapore, and I think the Ministry of Education came around and were looking for top students, and the pamphlets all had pretty girls on them. So I was like, okay, this is nice. I'll go there. The grass is green, and they played football. So growing up in Napier, came to Big Smoke, Auckland, did stats and organizational change. I failed a year and a half of university because I didn't know what I really wanted to do, and my why is really important to me. And it wasn't even like I partied a lot. I just kind of, I just didn't know what I was really doing and why I was doing it. Somehow got into professional services, and then ended up in Tokyo in recruitment, actually. And then ended up in Tokyo helping a large recruitment company scale and grow. GFC happened, and it made me think that right at that point, I needed to understand how the world worked more, because the GFC really sort of challenged everything we knew about, wait, I thought life was great, and wait, you made some decisions over there and I lost complete control of my life. I don't understand. So I did an MBA to understand how business worked a bit more. while I was doing the MBA, got into strategy consulting, thought it was the sexiest thing in the world, realized it was a lot of PowerPoints and not really moving the needle. And I was tired of not having a clear why. I was 30 years old and I had spent so many years of my life, for someone whose why was so important, I had enough of it. I was like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. This is not making a difference in the world. I need to make a difference in the world. And fortunately for me, right at that point, the Australian startup ecosystem was starting to be something. Mike Canberra's Atlassian had taken off. Blackbird had just kicked off. And so then I did my own tech startup. And funnily enough, I felt I had so much imposter syndrome in calling myself an entrepreneur for the first like 3-4 months. I was like, no, entrepreneurs are these mythical creatures. They do magical things. And it took me a while. It took me until about 10 days in a row of 1 a.m. 1 a.m. closeouts and 4 a.m. wake ups to go, okay, I'm calling myself an entrepreneur now. Like, if I'm going to live this hectic life, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, now's probably a good time to actually jump in with a question from our audience. So this question is from Jared. And I think it relates back to this part of the time of your life. What were some of the reasons that you thought that the funding wouldn't be used well in your startup? Because you mentioned that you had turned it down.
Yeah, good question, Jared. So I had built a strong team, and it was about 6 people, and we were doing good things. I think I respected and it meant a lot to me that someone was going to give me money. Like, I didn't take that for granted. It's such a and the first time you raise, it's a big statement, right? People actually giving you money and to go build something on your own vision. I felt like it was a nearly humbling exercise. And I remember my shock after 3 months of trying to raise when the lead investment, yeah, here's $80,000. I'm like, what? Okay, you're actually going to write me a check based on everything we've done. I was a little bit tired. The team was a little bit tired of spending a 1.5 years and trying to get traction. I think there were 3 things. We didn't get enough traction. I didn't feel like if I took the money, I could deliver on return on investment on the money. I didn't feel that. And Canva came calling. Okay. So those 2 things.
So what happened with the rest of your team? You've mentioned you do have a team around that time. Were they happy with that decision that you made? Did they also end up with Canva? Can you tell us a little bit about that transition period?
Yeah, sure. I'm very close with all of them still, which is nice. And I made the mistake of, with anybody who's in a startup right now, please make sure you have a vesting schedule and a 1-year cliff in regards to all your startup equity agreements. I didn't, and that was painful. And if you don't have it, change it now.
Can you elaborate a little more on what that means?
Yeah, sure. So a 4-year vesting schedule and a 1-year cliff is the standard contract that you should have as a founding team. Imagine the equity of the business can be split up into 48 bricks in a house, right? And a vesting schedule, what that means is you don't get the assets straight away. You get the right to earn the assets. So you will get one brick every month you are part of the enterprise or the organization. Then there's a cliff period as well. So for the first year, you don't get anything. And then after the first year, you get 12 bricks, and then you get 13, then you get 14, you get 15. Now, why is that important? Because that safeguards the entity first and foremost. So if your co-founder decides to step away 3 months in, 4 months in, 5 months in, etc., it safeguards the organization entity first and foremost. Does that make sense, Rosie? Yeah. And carrying on from the previous question, so I joined Canva The others joined. The others, actually, a good portion of them ended up joining me at Airtasker next time around, which is why we've built a little community in phase one. The venture business that we've built now has just changed from New Zealand ScaleUP to phase one. I tell a lot of them that I see 7-8 years ago where a whole bunch of us were in the beginning, kind of the genesis of the Australian startup ecosystem, or the first inflection point, and where we're all at. There's a portion of us that are movers and shakers, that are having a significant level of influence in the startup community, or had significant level of influence startup community in Australia. So the people who you see in the New Zealand startup ecosystem now, as the ecosystem really starts to mature, you'll start, oh yeah, you were there 6 years ago. And I'm sure that already happens, but my bet is it's going to escalate significantly. Yeah. Okay. So that's why I didn't take the money.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm guessing that was a pretty hard decision to be making as well. Sort of, I guess, moving on from that journey, can you tell us a little bit more about how you came across Canva? Obviously you were, was it 25th employee? Sorry, what was that one again?
Yeah, 25th employee.
Okay.
So the reason I remember thinking about it now, you know, I've asked myself why I thought Canva was special. And so Canva already had some sort of exclusive vibe about it, like the PR and the media, even back then in the Australian startup ecosystem. And I'd seen Mel speak when they were smaller, and I was like, wow, she's really impressive. Yeah, I mean, and if you haven't done much research into Melanie Perkins, so very important. Canva is 7 years on, supposedly around 30 bill. That seems like a significant achievement, right? But what a lot of people don't know is before that, Mel and Cliff, Melanie Perkins, the CEO, and Cliff Obrecht, the COO, and their life partners, had spent 7 years building Fusion Books, which was designed for high school yearbooks. So at the age of 18 and 19, they spent 7-8 years hustling and just building design for high school yearbooks. So in my opinion, we were living off the arbitrage of the learnings that they'd picked up. And they'd really, and so when I remember walking to Canva the first day and thinking, whoa, this is something interesting has happened. And now looking back at it, what I felt was that everything was intentioned. Like the wall, the murals, the floor, the tables. At 25 people, we already had a chef. And so forth. And that's not because they wanted fluff, because they were so clear, if we're going to do this, we're going to build a company that we want to work at. I remember walking in, I worked Saturday, Sundays, nonstop. And because for me now, this was an extension of my startup. I was, okay, I'm here to serve and help them achieve the mission. I remember on a Sunday, we were doing an office reshuffle, and I was taking a lead on it. And so Sunday came in to move, to just put like a notice, a little note saying, hey guy, whoever comes in, please move your things from this table to this table, this table to this table, etc. Mel walked in at about midday and went, no. When they walk in, they're going to have an awesome experience. And we were about 40 people. We spent the rest of the day sweeping the floor, wiping the table, moving everything, changing everything, because she was so clear. This is what I want. This is the company I want, etc. And this is how I want people to feel. I remember early on in a whiteboard, we were all squeezed in a room, again, about 30 people, and her drawing out buildings and going, I want about 200 people in that building over there working on this product, 300 people in this building over here. And it took me like half a second to go, wait, are you talking about like 1,000 people company here? And she was, and they are absolutely achieving it. And I think one of the biggest things I want to pass on to New Zealand founders is this is absolutely legit, in the sense that this is very, very doable. I've been there. I know what it looks like. Mel's pretty tremendous. It's just that she's focused. She's not like some sort of alien person or anything. This is very, very doable. And I really want to pass that on to all New Zealand founders.
I think that's some really great advice. And for people listening that want to hear more about Mel and her journey, she has a really great interview with Guy Raz from the How I Built This podcast. Yeah, really interesting story, that one. I'm just going to jump in with a question from Kat just here, because this is quite relevant. Kat is interested to hear your thoughts on scaling the culture at Canva, going from 25 to sort of 300 people and beyond. Sort of what you've been touching on here. How did you ensure the essence of Canva remained, and how did you tie this into the interview process, I assume, for ongoing hiring?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Great question, Kat. And I'm going to say a few maybe controversial things. So first of all, I don't believe in culture fit. That doesn't make any sense to me. I actually think it defeats diversity and inclusivity, mainly because you can't, it's very hard to codify or get into rubric your own culture of your organization and then assess it against someone else's culture in like a split second and in like an hour, 2-hour interview. Instead, what you should you should have is you should onboard people onto your culture, just like a new country invites new people from different countries, etc., going, hey, this is who we are, this is how we work, do you have the skill sets on board? Let me communicate very clearly, this is what we stand for, come on board, tweak things, right? So it's really not a culture fit assessment. It's come on board and be part of a culture and change our culture. So that's one. Two, in my opinion, every decision you make is a cultural decision. Every decision you make is a commercial decision. So how you spend your money in your wallet and your purse is a cultural statement about you. It's also a commercial statement about you. So they completely go hand in hand. And why do I say this? I think to have an awesome culture, the single most important thing is to feel like you're winning. So if you're winning, if you have goals and you're surpassing your goals, then everybody is excited, everybody is positive, everybody is clear, hey, we came in here to achieve this mission and we are progressing. When you don't feel like that, then you start having to, put plasters and sticky tape and this and this and this. So I always tell founders, please make sure your business is winning. No other sort of crutches, etc., is going to make it through. So and on a final note, as a leadership team grows more and more, their job, and this is actually one of the most important things as a company scales, the leadership team needs to constantly reimagine their job description or rewrite their job description, what they're accountable for. But their job becomes communicating context, charting a very clear path, and role modeling. And they need to own that. It's also why I don't like the title people and culture. Culture is owned by the CEO. And they're the ones who have to drive behavior, etc. I hope that clarifies.
I think that actually answers another one of the questions in here. So Alina Sharma's asked, in your opinion, what are the most important skills or traits that any startup founder must have, or if they don't have it, develop? How much would you add to what you've just said around that?
Yeah, I genuinely believe that I think you have to be very focused on a customer problem and solving that customer problem, because that desire to solve that problem, then you start learning, you start picking things up, you start growing. It's just that focus in regards to, I need to solve this and get this done. Other than that, to be honest, it's interesting. Mick Levinskas, who is one of the OGs from the Australian startup ecosystem, he would always say, you need to have the right amount of stubbornness and malleability. So you need to be able to listen to people who give you good advice, and then you need to translate that, execute that to vision. And that, on an adjacent note, this I'd like to call out to especially a lot of New Zealand founders, it's really important that you listen to the right people. Because there's a lot of people with good intentions, and there's a lot of people who want to help you out. But if they haven't been there and done that, if they haven't built a high growth startup, if they haven't been in an operator in a high growth startup, if they haven't been down the journeys you've been through, you want to be really careful about taking advice from those people. Not because they're bad people or they're poor intention, it's just that they haven't been there. And Mel and Cliff went out of their way to get advice from people who've been there and done that. And if you don't mind, I'll share one more story here. So Canva's first engineering advisor and assessor of engineering talent was Lars Rasmussen, who was the creator of Google Maps and then Facebook engineering. They'd got him on board as an advisor, and he assessed the first group of engineers that they brought on board. So the bar was set pretty high. And also, for many of you, whoever remembers, there was a product called Google Wave from about 15 years ago in Google Sydney. That didn't work out, and a bunch of those engineers joined Canva. So it's that, again, listening to people who've been there, done that before, and then injection of know-how. So I can't stress this enough. There's 92 people here. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of New Zealand founders here. Please be very conscious of who you're listening to and who you're getting advice from.
Cool. And I love that you're trying to help, spark the ecosystem here in New Zealand. It's so great. And I actually just want to ask a quick question around imposter syndrome, because I know you mentioned it earlier, and I know that there's going to be so many people, in this chat that already feel it or felt it in the past. What kind of advice do you have for people that are either founders or even employees that just feel, what am I doing? And yeah, do you have any advice?
Yeah, this is, yeah, thanks for asking it, Sinead. I'm good with big picture. I'm good at connecting random dots. I'm good at thinking strategically. I am not as good on attention to detail, right? So some of my team members were yesterday giving me feedback about my slides and the different font and different designs. And it's mainly because I don't prioritize them as much. I'm like, okay, what are the big problems? Let's tackle the big problems and go. I remember creating my first ever financial model for my startup. And it's actually a really impressive, a really cool model. And it was like 5 tabs and all the cells connected to each other. And I could tell where revenue was, I could tell where cost was coming from. And I shared it with a group of the founders in New Zealand recently. It took me a week to create. And I would never have imagined I could have done that. But I started with 1 cell, and then I started writing and I started constructing, and I made it. And that has happened to me so many times in Startupland, where I've just had to work stuff out. I've had to make things. I've had to do things. So whenever a younger person or somebody from without those skills tell me, hey, I'm not sure, I know how to do this, trust me, you totally can. If I can create a financial model, I'm pretty sure everybody can do pretty much anything they need to. So yeah, just on the imposter syndrome note, and I want to call this out before, and happy for either of you to touch on this later on. Wanted to make sure I call out that it's really sucky for women and other minority groups in business in general, but also in startup land, right? And I think it's always, I have a little bit more of influence now in the sector. I think it's important to call that out, at least acknowledge it, and that it's something that all of us need to do. Well, in New Zealand specifically, women and Maori and Pacifica, it's really important that the sector definitely put even more effort to making sure there's accessibility from a leadership perspective, and also across the whole product landscape. So, yeah.
Did you want to touch on Airtasker before you
Yeah.
get to phase one?
Yeah. So there's a blog article. If Shay or Simon are in the participants, if or any of the New Zealand ScaleUp people, if you could share that in the chat, that'd be kind. So I came back home. I just wanted to help the New Zealand startup ecosystem grow faster. I wanted the lessons and stories I've picked up to be shared with a whole bunch of early stage founders. And I didn't want to, I just wanted to get stuck in. I didn't want to like meet X number of people. I just wanted to straight away start speaking to founders and helping them. From that, New Zealand ScaleUp was born. And we were speaking to the community. We were also helping larger scale startups grow faster. So I live with Mark, the CEO of Halter, and Halter is doing great guns. Definitely one of the startups that is definitely going north. And also quite a few other things. We realized there were 3 problems that needed to be solved. That talent acquisition the talent markets are crazy right now. So more startups could have more support on the talent acquisition side. That more startups could level up faster. They're thrown in the deep end. They need to learn how to manage people. They need to learn product management, growth marketing. So built a separate business for that. So built a little TA business and a L&D, globally scaling L&D marketplace. And then lastly, New Zealand ScaleUp's become this thing called phase 1. And phase 1 is a Y Combinator style venture firm. We don't charge anything. We don't take any money of any sort. We just build a community of early stage founders and connect them with operators who've been there, done that. So for example, New Zealand has the 15th engineer on the Android operating system living in Ponsonby. That's nuts. We've got like a collection of people who have actually seen crazy scale and being very picky about, okay, those operators, founders, connect them so that, like I said earlier on, that injection of know-how really kicks in. So that's what we do. And we do that through like strategy sessions, events, etc. In fact, next Thursday, we're going to have Al Bentley, the CEO of Simply Wall Street. We're going to have Uber's first product manager. We're going to have Jonathan Louis, co-founder from Airtasker, etc. All of these people speaking. And we are going to raise a pre-seed fund to invest into these early stage startups. So that's what.
Fantastic. That sounds really exciting. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about what you're doing in preparation for that pre-seed round? Anyone that might be going through that at the moment, I'm sure would love some insight into that.
Yeah, sure. So what we, the companies that we want to invest into and that we will invest into are the ones who I earlier spoke about, who have product market fit. Right, so they have a very clear acute problem statement, very clear, and there's traction against that problem statement. So, so you can show the clear customer base and you show traction against it. There is a vision. So there is clearly another problem roadmap that you've got. So I've solved this problem. I've got these customers, the 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever it is, that love the solution and solve my problem so well. Great. And I can show you, this is the grand vision we have in regards to, we're going to do this, and then the next step, and the next step, and next step. And I just want to make sure that we help a whole bunch of companies get onto that first step, because I really think that's where it starts and ends. Because if you get that, then everything's on the card. So, so we want to look at that, and preferably a startup that's worked out a growth engine. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic.
Jay actually had a question, which I think you probably just answered around, what are the key things that founders should know before pitching in front of investors? And he also asked, if the business is tracking well, but the size of the market isn't clear yet, would you still suggest going ahead with fundraising? Do you have any comments around that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. And again, this might be slightly, it might go against a little bit of what other VCs say. I'm not a big fan of assessing TAM, total addressable market, etc. It's, you listen to, I was listening to the Instagram founder, and even you look at smartphones, it's really hard to forecast what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. It's really hard to connect the dots looking forward. So just solve today's problem and solve it damn well. I would be surprised if there are many investors who look at a startup and they can clearly show that they have something that a group of people can't live without, right? So it's not, hey, theory, I think they can't live without evidence. These 100 people love it. They are going to come back over and over and over and over again. Given the market right now, my bet is the vast majority of VCs will go, yeah, okay, I'm talking to you. And the questions around total addressable market, etc., go away, because you've just proven you have a problem you can solve, and you can build a product that addresses it, and that makes you incredibly investable.
Cool. I might as well ask the second part of his question as well, which is just around because I guess there'll be a lot of people in this group that are still, working in their corporate jobs that may not be, not sure when they're ready to take the leap. So for those who do have full-time jobs and then have a startup as a side project, at what point do you think that they should make a decision to leave their jobs and fully focus on their startup? And are there any kind of components that you look at to help them make their mind up?
Yeah, I want to be very clear. It's being part of a startup or being an entrepreneur doesn't make you a better person than somebody who's living in corporate land. It doesn't make you more of a hero. It doesn't make you, etc. Nothing. I think what's really important is to be conscious of who you are and the decisions you're making. So be very honest with yourself around your risk profile. I see a lot of co-founders, like you see one co-founder go full-time, and then you see the other co-founder who's got a young family, etc., going, I'm going to go full-time. And then it just quite never happens, right? And I'm not saying if you have a young family, you can't go full-time, but your risk profile is different. You want to be honest about it. You want to be honest about whether you are up for building a startup. Look, building a startup is, I think, very smart play from a long game perspective, from a mid to long game perspective. You commit to startup land properly, focus on a customer, 5 to 8 years down the road, it is paying significant dividend. I'm a good example of that. There are many, many people in more mature environments that are really good examples of that. But when do you do it? I think when you are very clear, you have identified a problem that you want to solve, and it's quite niche, and you're excited about it. But I would suggest people go for it. But if there's anything you want to hold off on, it's okay, I want to solve this problem. I'm really passionate about this problem space. I think the minute you're excited about that, then go.
Cool, thanks. That was really helpful. I guess there's no black and white answer for that one, so you did well.
Okay, brilliant. I think maybe I might ask one more question, and then we can move into the Q&A, because we've got some really good questions coming through. So I guess I just wanted to know where to from here. What are your big goals over the next, I guess, couple of years? And I guess, is COVID impacting any of this at the moment for you? Is that kind of holding things back, or are you still sort of going to plan?
No, like I said, I was telling all of you how I was a little bit down the first week. It was a bit rough, and it was a bit harder to get out of bed. And then I shared it with my team, and it turned out that all of us felt a little bit, quite a few of us felt a little bit down. And then we created this lockdown lounge and started keeping each other accountable. So I think it's important to call out that, hey, in this level of change and turmoil, you're going to go through ups and downs. I think it's quite valuable to make sure that you're feeling okay, and tell people if you're not feeling okay, and take care of yourselves. So other than that, COVID hasn't stopped me. We're going great guns. We set ourselves a goal. The reason why we started all this is to make New Zealand a happier place, right? I mean, that's the goal, right? Like, I just want to be happier, and happiness is measured by a lot of factors like jobs, opportunities, learning, growth, more people coming here, more wellness, etc. But you just like pull it all together in happiness. I reckon if we had a few high-scale growth Canvas, potentially halters, etc., in New Zealand, the country changes, right? And we're a population of 5 million. If we have a few truly high-growth startups, it's just awesome for all of us. And that's my goal. We've set ourselves a goal of 50 investable startups, the way I described investable, by January next year. So we wanted to get to 10 by the next sort of 2-3 months. And it's not to invest. I want to be very clear. It is investable. So really helping 50 early stage founders identify product market fit and a clear vision and potentially a growth engine. Because I think then if we have 50 of those by early next year, my bet is, okay, we're going to have those high growth startups come through. Right?
Fantastic. That's really exciting.
Yeah, please hit me up if you're interested in being one of those companies. And if you have a problem that you're working on, we have this problem buddy system as part of phase 1, where we partner you with an early stage founder. So that you have someone who's accountable with you, that can work with you, because it's lonely trying to work out a problem and trying to isolate. So we can work with you in regards to, hey, is this a problem? Is this monetizable? Is there a willingness to pay around this? Is this easy to access? What are the nuances? You haven't done this research. Can you start making money out of this, etc. Right? So all of those things. So we have a simple system that helps you do that. So please let us know and we can help you with that.
Brilliant.
Mahesh, can you please let everyone know how they can hit you up?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. It is actually, I will share this. That document. I think everybody can access. Details should be there, and there's also more detail on how to build a unicorn. You can hit me up at at Mahesh, M-A-H-E-S-H. Oh, I forget doing that. Anyway, Mahesh, M-A-H-E-S-H at phase 1, PHASEONE.ventures.
Cool.
Okay, fantastic. I'm sure you're going to be bombarded with emails now. So we have some great questions coming through. So I think we'll just take it from the top. Sinead and I can just alternate asking each of the questions. So we'll start with Harsh's question. How do you navigate conflicting customer feedback around the problem you're solving and cutting through the noise to improve the overall product?
Fantastic. Great question. So in my mind, what you want to have is, think of a table, customer A, customer B, customer C, customer D, customer E, and all of these adjacent customer personas. And then on the other axis, you have problem A, problem B, problem C, problem D, like adjacent problems. So effectively, then you have a table where you have an intersection of each customer persona and the appropriate problem, right? So again, on the X, you have customer A, customer B, customer C. On the Y, you have problems. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to discover the cell which has the highest willingness to pay and easiest access, because that's probably the intersection which gives you the strongest foothold to build a business and then start to propagate to all of the other customer personas and or problem areas. So if you're getting conflicting advice, my suggestion is you've got to pick one. And there's nothing like, one of my favorite things to do with early stage founders is when they go, well, I've got to do A, got to do B, got to do C. And I know I've been there. And then I turn around and go, sorry, what's priority number one. And I go, no, no, I've got both these things. No, no, no. You get pick one. Pick one thing that you absolutely are going to do and you have to do. And suddenly things start to become clear. And when you have limited time and resources, hard prioritization is critical. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, actually, there's two questions from Farouk. So, yeah, you've kind of just touched on this. So the first question was, should every startup solve a unique problem? And two, does prototype need to be floated internally before going public, or is testing all good to be put to public use?
Yeah, yes, I think second part's a very interesting point. This is definitely what I suggest, and obviously different industries, different models, different things are different. But I suggest creating a bit of a petri dish. So you've got a problem, and you've got X number of customers, like say 5, 20, 30, 40, 100, whatever it is, and you just want to go into closed beta with those like group of people. And you're testing constantly with those group of people, qualitative research, quantitative research, and also testing solutions. And importantly, it's important to segment then that 100 people into, oh, it's actually there's 20-year-old women who live in Ponsonby here, 35-year-old men who live in Grey Lynn over here. Oh, I see they're behaving slightly differently. They're looking at the problem slightly differently. All right, let me focus on this group. Right, so having that petri dish is good. So I suggest keeping, having your product offering in a closed beta. Now, the one place where this is different is if you're automating a workflow, because like you already know something's working. You know, like some things, whether, so LevelUp is a good example, the global L&D marketplace that Simon and Shay are building and scaling. They discovered something that already worked. Okay, great. Let's just do more of that because that's already working. It's generating revenue. And then, okay, now let's look at the data. Let's look at the information and see, wait, what's actually happening? Who's buying? What's happening, etc. So it's not always clear cut in regards to, oh, you have to have the problem statement and then get there. Sometimes you do come across, oh, I just need to automate construction, occupation, safety, and health. Like, can we just digitize this audit program, for example, right? So, yeah, that answered a bit more than what he asked, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you. Our next question is from Peter. What is the most engaging customer problem that you have solved?
Look, I mean, so what's given me the experience to which I speak from today is being involved in executive conversations at Canva and Airtasker and Simply Wall Street, right? And then recently being and then mentoring a whole bunch of startups, and I was recognized as one of the more valuable mentors at Startmate. I think being in those executive conversations around how to allocate capital. And what product decisions to make and the consequent people decisions to make and how to change the organization, etc. It really starts to fine tune your thinking across the board. I think Airtasker solved a really cool problem. Like it was work for everybody, right? Like if you need a problem solved, put it out there, and it gets solved. The opportunity for a solution like Airtasker was quite incredible. I think there was opportunity for us to hit much bigger heights. So that's really cool. The other thing I really like in seeing problems, I really like seeing like very niche problems. Like there's a company that we've helped recently called Green Lake Medical, University of Auckland alum, clinical coding, translating. So it seems doctors tag or transcribe all the diagnoses and medicines into like codes, and there's a clinical code is an actual job, like someone who comes in and codes them into like tags so they can goes into information and it's stored and then you can use it. Automating that Great. Niche, clear problem, small, acute, love it, easy. So the more niche, the better, I think.
Okay, fantastic.
Cool. So most of the unicorns are B2C, but how easy, or do you have any advice on identifying an acute customer problem if you're in a B2B environment?
Yeah, it's actually interesting, right? So I actually think a B2B solution, and I want to be like I've definitely had experience in B2B. I mean, Canva went enterprise, and Airtasker in a way was B2B because there was individual proprietors, etc. I think with B2B, it's a lot clearer who your customer is. I think it's important when you come up with your business model and your product that you understand what level of frequency that you're solving a problem with. Because if it's a low frequency problem, then the ticket, the ticket value should be quite high. And conversely, with the C, it's a high frequency problem. The ticket value or the price is quite low. I think you can. I think you can scale globally B2B problems. This isn't an area of expertise for me. I think creating strong sales teams and a strong growth engine, part of the sales team, becomes quite important, a lot more important B2B. I am still a big believer in SEO, performance marketing, etc. For growth engines, but I think you really have to flesh out the sales side of things on the B2B a bit more.
Okay, brilliant. The next question is from AJ. If your startup is a platform business that has paying businesses as customers, but is only successful if you attract and grow non-paying consumer style or user customers, which is the customer you initially want to be focusing on, the non-paying one that you have to attract, or the customer that you have to sell that first coffee to? It's a really good question.
Yeah, good question. So I don't think the second is a customer. The customer is the person who's paying. I think the second is a user. So, and I think that nuance is quite valuable. We talked about who the most important stakeholder is, and I suggested that was the customer. So you're solving a problem for someone, and they're paying you for it. Now, in your solution, you happen to need users, or you happen to need somebody else to come in. You could solve that problem in some other way, but whatever way that you've decided, the solution requires users. The most important person is the customer, right? It really is. Now, in servitude to solving that customer's problem, if it becomes very clear to you that your solution needs to have X number of users, great. Then it's a tactic to have these users on board. It's nearly like part of the solution is to have X number of users. And I think it's really important to think about this strategically. My customers over here, for my customer to have a great solution and have great service, I need to bring these resources here. Right. And so you're still in servitude of the customer. You look at Google, right? So Google's interesting. So you have Google Ads as the customer. The argument there is they had such a technology breakthrough that they had X number of users coming through. If they hadn't discovered Google Ads, etc., they would have died eventually. And it's funny how people who really nail SEO think about, oh, I actually have to think about what the Google engineer is thinking about and make sure that SEO is done accordingly. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Oh, okay. Let's try and get through as many as we can. There's just more and more keep coming. Amazing. So when does one start looking at growth? Sorry, this is from Alexander. When does one start looking at growth like a section of the business? So marketing or finance, etc.
Yeah, so great. So in the document I shared, and I'll share it one more time on how to build a unicorn. There's Casey Winters is the guy who headed up growth at Pinterest, and he was an advisor for us at Canva, and Andre Penantoine, who was the head of growth at Canva, then effectively was kind of the mentor for a lot of growth people in the Australian startup ecosystem. They're very clear about the fact that if you don't have product market fit and you start focusing on growth, it's an expensive game you're playing, because then you start like putting more money on the product and trying to sell more and trying to sell more. And look, if you're doing that to test the market, understand the market, learn, that's great. But let's be very clear, you're not going to be able to scale. So if you try to get more users so you can get that petri dish going and learn more, that's fine from a strategic perspective. So you should really try to grow the business once you have product market fit. Once it's so clear to you that you have something that people can't live without. And then absolutely, you need to discover a growth engine. SEO is fantastic. Internationalization is fantastic. And there are so many interesting tools and interesting ways to think about a growth engine. Once you have product market fit, I strongly suggest bringing on board a head of growth or someone else to come on board to help you think about growth, mainly because your leadership team, you've got maybe 10 people, 15 people, the business is going, you've got a bit of funding. You need to like give yourself headspace to think strategically on growth. And if people on the call have not heard of Pirate Metrics, our acquisition, activation, retention, revenue referral, that's why it's called Pirate Metrics, because our you want someone to come on board to focus on acquisition, activation, and revenue. Because you've worked so hard to build something that retains your customers, that solves your customer problem, right? It's just, you need someone with enough headspace who you trust and who thinks strategically to, okay, how do we get more eyeballs on our product? Everything's on the cards. We can build a machine learning tool. We can write 100 documents. We can hire a group of people overseas to write SEO. We can be really creative. We can take our whole engineering team and work on growth engineering tactics, but it requires that strategic headspace. So I think it's a critical part, like bringing on board a head of growth once you get product market fit. Okay,
fantastic. Our next question is from Murta, and this can just be hopefully a just short answer. It just touches back on something that you spoke about earlier about the culture. Murta says, I've heard that Richard White, CEO and founder of WiseTech Global, which is another Oz tech giant, saying culture eats strategy for lunch. So are you saying that culture is a byproduct of good strategy and operations?
No, I think culture is an extension of the CEO. And I think a CEO and a leadership team that has a very clear understanding of the problem that they're trying to solve, of who they are as people, how important is the business, what kind of company do they want to create, when do they want to exit? Are they here to build a huge global? So one of the first questions I ask, two questions I ask when I work with early stage founders: why are you doing this and who are you? And I spend like an hour. I just want to hear the life story. Like, what glitches in your system have happened that you want to do this really tough thing? And it's just good to share and understand. And when do you want to exit? And what I mean by exit is, when is this successful in your mind? I think having that clarity then allows you to make the right type of people decisions, because you're clear and honest about it. One of the products of having that kind of clarity, or working really hard to have that clarity, is strategy, right? Strategic direction. One other thing I'd say, every single successful startup that I've seen, I've worked with, mentored, has a strong culture of writing. So when you need to make a decision, write a document. You need, especially with people decisions, The number of times I've seen people make tough people decisions on this conversation over here, that conversation over this, those are just opinions. Write a document, write the problem down, etc. Amazon's famous for this in the, I think the 6-page or 1-page document. Every major startup I've worked with, there's a strong culture of writing because it forces you to think cleanly and think clearly. So your decisions are better.
Cool. I might just actually go down, and just because we've probably only got time for a couple more questions. There was one about sorry, I'm just trying to find it. The New Zealand space. Okay, it's it's gone. Oh, here we go. Okay, Darren Ward. Coming back to New Zealand, what do you think the biggest barriers are to enabling New Zealand startups to scale to their potential? And how much is it the founder? How much is it the regulation?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Thanks for coming for the to the event. I actually think it's not the founder; it's the ecosystem right now. The founders I meet, and I have the absolute privilege to work with, Toby from Easy Rent, Dave from Sugar, Sukant from Zorbi, and so many others. It's an absolute privilege to see these people make this their life's work and charge towards big goals. I think the ecosystem as more and more people who've been there, done that, come into the ecosystem and they provide the right type of advice and the right tactics and ask the right questions, then it helps these founders to achieve big things. I remember Simon, when I was working with Simon early on in the first 2 months, I remember him turning to me and going, Mahesh, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Like, why can you can't do this stuff? And there was a light bulb moment to me when I realized he literally said, I haven't seen this. I haven't seen these scale ups. I don't know what you're talking about here. And I think that role modeling is quite powerful and important. So bringing over more and more Kiwis who have seen high growth in San Fran and UK, getting them over here, giving them opportunity to come over here and share their stories. I also think the R&D tax incentives could definitely improve for early stage founders to access more capital, because getting the startup sector really humming is a common good. It's good for all of us. So the government setting aside, hey, we're happy with this amount of cash, churn and burn, you guys go, would be a powerful thing to do.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Rosie,
we're sort of looking to finish up around now. Mahesh, do you have time to answer maybe a few more questions? I'm hoping that any ones that you don't get to today, maybe you could just write a few words on and we could send it out in an email to all our attendees so they get that information. Do you have time to answer maybe one more?
Yeah, and then I just wanted to make one more comment after that, if that's okay.
Okay, fantastic. I think maybe we would look at, here's one from Jennifer. How do you know when to stop or pivot a startup? Are there any telltale signs?
Definitely. And I hope there's been a strong theme in this conversation around problem and customer love. And no conversation of ideas, no conversation on total addressable market, no conversation on pitch deck, etc. I think you change and you pivot when you realize you're doing a lot of work and you're not getting a lot of love from customers. And the retention is just not there. And when you start selling and you start like, here's the solution, take the solution. Why aren't they going on the website? Why aren't they doing this? Maybe if we spend X amount of cash on Facebook marketing, maybe if we, no, it's not gonna work. Well, I have never seen it work. I think when that becomes clear to you, then you need to go back to the whiteboard and go, I don't think I understand the customer problem enough. and maybe I need to make some pivots, etc. So that's what I want to say. I'll make that comment if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I commented on this earlier. I think we've been, the team and I, we've been able to achieve a lot of cool things. I'm really excited about Highlight. These young group of people trying to, like the Talent Army, trying to help early stage founders find top people across Australia and New Zealand. I'm really excited about Level Up. And I'm really excited about phase 1 and what we're doing. One thing we haven't nailed is it's been really important to connect with Tangata Whenua and the Pacifica community. And I've knocked on doors and need to keep knocking on doors and keep knocking, keep being present. Really important that we make sure that everybody is part of these huge economic opportunities. The technology sector is going to be there. Software is still very early days. It's very early days. This is where a lot of value is going to be created across the world. And we have to make sure that it is accessible to all parts of the community. So anybody that's within those communities, please let me know. It's something that's really important to me, and I want to keep helping, and I want to keep making this more accessible. Also, again, calling out, I hope both of you don't mind me saying this, it's really sucky for women. I've definitely been in leadership positions in startups, and it's not a fair playing field. At minimum, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, who wants to begin?
Okay, so I think we might leave it there. There are a lot of great questions that obviously we haven't got around to today. So maybe if you've got some time, Mahesh, you can answer some of them. And like I said, we'll send them out to everyone that joined today.
Yeah.
Okay. Sinead?
There's one that I really liked, and I'm sorry if I'm biased, but I can't help but have my HR hat on. And it was probably the one from Kat Barber right at the start around scaling and culture and how to infiltrate that culture like you did at Canva into a startup. So yeah, congrats, Catherine. I'll get in touch with you afterwards and we can sort out the Alexa. But yeah, that was a really awesome question. And I think all of the questions are so great though. That was really hard to choose.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Rosie. Thanks so much, Sinead. Thanks so much, Shane, for sponsoring this. AWS always there. AWS always there, unlike many other players. And also, there's 3 businesses: Highlight, Level Up, and Phase 1. Please follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Show some love. We're trying to make New Zealand a happier place. So.
Perfect. Yes, everybody go out and do that. So I think that's time for us today. We will, as I mentioned, get that recording through to you and some of the answers to those questions that we didn't get time for today. So again, just to thank our sponsors, obviously AWS. Thanks for the great giveaway today, Talent Army and Cultivate for all your continued support and making these startup grind events possible. And we're looking forward to our next one. Hopefully that's going to be one that's in person again, but yeah, make sure you're part of our newsletter and our Facebook group so we can keep you up to date of when and where that one will be. So thanks everyone, appreciate it.
Fingers crossed for level 2 and 1.
Cheers, thanks all.
Bye, thanks Mahesh.
Thank you.